Right, here we go. Carnage Marauder. Carnage, one of the worst spikes right now, as people call it. Not really. Carnage is still very viable for every aspect of this game, including both PvP and PvE, both endgame content. Like, it is there. You don't have to worry about it. It is still very, very, very decent and very good. It has suffered some changes recently, yes, sure. It dropped from its top spot on the DPS charts, yes, but it's still very, very viable. It is very situational though, but it is very viable. So, without further ado, let's just go into stats immediately and shorten this video as much as possible. So, stats. As you can see here, I am running 1414 alacrity, 765 accuracy, and 2k critical. Everything else is just there. Why 1414 alacrity? Because you get 3% alacrity bonus from a Taro form. That means you do not have to have 1876 alacrity like you would usually have to on other classes and other specs, certain classes and specs, to break that 1.3 GCD barrier. So we are going back to 1414, which is enough to break us out of the 15.5% alacrity bonus. So we are at 1.3 GCD, as you can see in the right corner. Stats are there. Accuracy 765 to break the 110%, so you do not miss any of your attacks, and 2k critical. You can drop this 1.6 or 1.7, but 2k is still fine enough. The only change you have to make to drop to 1414 alacrity is swap 2 enhancements from alacrity to critical. That's it. Utilities. Utilities are very situational, as you would know, because every fight requires different utilities, but you can use these I'm using right now for your usual daily use. If you're doing heroics, farming, flashpoints, or just, random operations, story mode, hard modes even, you can use these utilities and they will be perfectly fine. I will tell you why. So, Cloak of Carnage increases damage dealt by Cloak of Pain by 15% and increases duration by 4 seconds. Keep in mind that Cloak of Carnage is one of your defensive utilities, or well, defensive cooldowns, that gives you 20% damage reduction, and it returns damage to attackers. It lasts for what, 10 seconds, so with this utility it actually lasts for 14 seconds. Also keep in mind that Cloak of Pain actually resets every time you are attacked, so that damage reduction still persists. Brazen, it's straight damage reduction for 2%, which is very valuable, don't get me wrong, it is very, very valuable. And you build 2 Fury when you are attacked, which is, trust me, very necessary, because you will be getting attacked. And it happens once every global cooldown. This utility is still bound up by your global cooldown, so instead of 1.5 seconds, it's actually 1.3 seconds. That's skillful. For masterful, I'm using Relentless because it removes the Fury cost for predation, and I'm using Defensive Roll because it is 30% area of effect DR, and it increases your internal and elemental damage reduction by 3%. Very valuable. This is a must-have at all times. For Heroic, I'm using Unbound, because I am using Relentless, obviously. So Unbound is a utility for predation that removes, that purges any movement impairing effects such as slows and roots. Plus it gives your predation a 30% movement speed bonus. Very, very valuable. Brooding, this is this utility needs to be passive, as in we should not be spec'd into this, or we should not be needing to spec into this to get our stacks, Fury stacks. Brooding basically gets you 30 Fury stacks while you're channeling what's the name again? You are channeling Hatred, which is your HP restoration ability, but it also works on any other, such as a Life Day Orb. So when I use it, I am still getting Fury stacks. And the last for Heroic would be Cloak of Annihilation, because it reduces cooldown on your Cloak of Pain by 3 seconds for every usage of Assault, Battering Assault, or Crippling Slash. Keep in mind you won't be using Crippling Slash in PvE, but you will be using Assault and Battering Assault in your rotation for sure. So this is a very valuable utility. And for Legendary, this Thirst for Rage. It gives you 12 rage when you activated your Bloodthirst, which is your raid buff, and it heals you for 1% of your max HP when you activate an ability that consumes rage. Keep in mind the 12 rage stacks are gained immediately upon activation of Bloodthirst, but you get 1% of your HP whenever you activate an ability, even though your raid buff, or aka Bloodthirst, is down. So that still persists as long as you have this utility. That's it. You may, if you are doing say flashpoints or heroics or dailies or whatever, you can drop Thirst for Rage for Undying or for Cloak of Rage or for Path Carver. But for raids, I definitely recommend using Thirst for Rage. This utility is very situational as well, because sometimes, especially in the very end game, as in nightmare raids, even hard mode raids or operations, you sometimes won't be using your raid buff at the start. Say Terror from Beyond Dreadguards, you won't be using your raid buff at the start, but still you can keep this utility point here, because later on you will be still using it, so it can be very valuable. Now let's finish with this and go into rotation. So Carnage rotation has changed, very much so. Not drastically, but it has changed. There are 2 rotations that you should be working with. They are a bit different, but the key components in them are still the same. One relies on having your raid buff at the start of the fight. The second one relies on not having that raid buff. So let's go with the one that utilizes your raid buff at the start of the fight. I'm just gonna build my Fury stacks first, and I'm gonna explain the rotation for you. So, at the start of the fight, you would usually pop your raid buff and leap into the target. But you will consume your 30 stacks of Fury in the process. So, you will be using your Bloodthirst, your raid buff. You will leap to your target. You will use Frenzy to gain 30 stacks of Fury to use your Berserk. So, you use Bloodthirst, Frenzy, Berserk, Assault, Bloodthirst, Frenzy, Berserk, Massacre, Ferocity, Dual Saber Throw. Then you want to apply your armor debuff to the target with Gore and go for Ravage, Devastating Blast. You will still have 1 stack of Berserk left at the end, and the best thing to utilize that 1 stack of Berserk is with Massacre. Let me quickly cover why Carnage is different from Annihilation and from Fury. So Carnage has a very specific ability set. It has a different Berserk and it has Ferocity. those two distinct features are only there for Carnage. So Berserk, it's a different kind of Berserk. It increases your alacrity by 30% for 6 abilities, 6 activations, 30% increased alacrity. Every attack on target consumes 1 stack. And then Ferocity. Now Ferocity has been changed recently. It went from a time-based buff to a stack-based buff. So I'm just gonna cover the stack-based buff right now. When you use Berserk, you gain 3 stacks of Ferocity to use on now I may be wrong. Gore, Massacre, Vicious Throw, Smash, and Sweeping Slash, and Devastating Blast. Any of those abilities will consume 1 stack of Ferocity. Now the best ones to use them on are Ravage, Devastating Blast, Vicious Throw, Gore, and Sweeping Slash. You will not be using Smash as a Carnage Marauder at all. You will be using Sweeping Slash in an AoE friendly environment. Otherwise you will be using it in your rotation for Vicious Throw, Gore, Devastating Blast, and Ravage. Now, without the Berserk buff, you will gain only 2 stacks of Ferocity. Okay, let me show you the rotation where we utilize the raid buff at the start of the fight. I'm just gonna get my Fury stacks up. Now, as for your non-Bloodthirst or non-Raidbuff opener, you are conducting things a bit differently. You are still gonna have 30 stacks of Fury to begin with. So you are gonna leap to your target and you're gonna use Massacre because you're gonna get that Ataru form proc. You need that. That's a very valuable part of your DPS. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna leap to your target, you're gonna use Massacre, and then you're gonna proceed with using your Berserk. So 6 stacks of Berserk. You are using it on Assault, Battering Assault, Dual Saber Throw, Ravage, Devastating Blast, and Gore. Now, keep in mind you also have to use Ferocity in there. So, Assault, Battering Assault, Ferocity, Dual Saber Throw, Ravage, Devastating Blast, Gore. And then you're proceeding with your stack building rotation, which is Massacre, Assault, Battering Assault, Ferocity, Vicious Throw, Devastating Blast, and 4 Massacres. So, as following. back on track. So Assault, Battering Assault, Ferocity, do Saber Throw, Ravage, Devastating Blast, and Gore. And then Massacre, Assault, Battering Assault was Frenzy, Vicious Throw, Devastating Blast, and 4 Massacres. So as you could see in those 2 videos, the first one utilizes your raid buff at the start. You gain 12 stacks of Rage immediately, but you lose your 30 stacks of Fury in the process of activating your raid buff. Afterwards, you are bound to use Frenzy to regain those 30 stacks to go into your Berserk mode. Berserk mode basically gives you a huge alacrity or a huge attack speed buff, and it costs stacks to use your abilities. 6 stacks of increased alacrity or increased attack speed. You are using them as following. You are using Massacre, Ferocity, and Dual Saber Throw. Then you are using Gore to apply an armor debuff, which is very valuable. Then you are using Ravage and Devastating Blast. And you are left with 1 stack, which is used for Massacre at the end. That is your opener with Bloodthirst. Now the following would be regaining those 30 stacks while still dealing damage. Now that's where your DPS will start to fall off, but you will regain those 30 stacks very fast. The rotation, the stack building rotation, is as following. You are using Massacre, Assault, and Battering Assault, and you are using Ferocity as soon as it's back off cooldown. So Massacre, Assault, Battering Assault, plus Ferocity, and you are using your 2 stacks of Ferocity for Vicious Throw and Devastating Blast. And then you are using 4 Massacres to finish it off. So you will end up at 30 stacks of Frenzy or a Fury. Then you are using your Berserk again, and you are proceeding with your usual burst, which is as following: Assault, Battering Assault, Ferocity, Dual Saber Throw, Ravage, Devastating Blast, Gore. And you are going back on track with your Rage building or Fury building process. Massacre, Assault, Battering Assault, Ferocity, Vicious Throw, Devastating Blast, and 4 Massacres. Rinse and repeat. So now that I've shown you those 2 rotations, keep in mind it's gonna take a bit of time and a bit of skill to remember them. They're not long, but it's gonna take you a bit. Once you learn those rotations, just keep practicing and keep taking your Carnage Marauder and PvE. Keep taking it to flashpoints, keep taking it to operations. Try doing it with these. Sit on the operation dummy and perfect your Marauder gameplay, specifically your Carnage Marauder gameplay. It's in a very bad spot right now, but it's still there. You will be out DPSing people once you learn and once you grasp onto how to play this spec correctly. It's very valuable due to its abilities, specifically Gore, because it gives you that armor debuff. And regarding DPS numbers, once you actually learn how to play this in an actual PvE environment, you will still be out DPSing a lot of people. That's it for my Carnage Marauder guide, and thank you for watching.